Welcome to our Jackson home, front porch discussions without the front porch. Today on the board we have my partner and Mike, I guess you would say, Luke Pruitt.
We need a front porch.
Yes, we got it. We can't bring the front porch in here.
That's true.
I mean, if we're broadcasting outside in the front porch, can you see that, Luke?
We need to make ourselves portable.
Yes, I am portable. I got a couple of legs, but you mean we need to make this stuff portable?
Yes,
Reachable, actually.
Yes.
Well, yes, we'd like to introduce our guest here today, author, sculptor, painter, musician, songwriter, all-around Renaissance man, Mr. Craig Davis. How you doing, Craig?
Just fine, Jim. How are you?
Oh, yes. Craig is very enthused to be here today. All right, well, we like to start off every broadcast with a question from our listeners. We have a bunch that we can go through here today, but the first one out of the bucket o' questions is a question from Albert R. of Nashville, Tennessee, who says, "It's been really hot this season. What are some ways to keep cool if you find yourself without air conditioning?" Now, I remember
nudity.
Oh, well, that's a good. As long as you're in your house by yourself. See, I was
just a casual suggestion.
Yeah, but one time I had an apartment by myself, and I got the notice from the power company that the whole power was going to be shut off for a couple of days.
Sure.
So I said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the store and get the crushed ice from the ice, whatever you call those things, outside the gas station.
Yeah,
I'm just going to lay in ice water. And it was great for about the first 20 seconds until I remembered I was laying in a bathtub of ice water. And then it became painful. But it's sort of like a dunk, get out. Oh, I'm hot, dunk. Get out. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Craig, what do you think? Best way to stay cool?
Just go to your house in Maine.
Ah.
Doesn't everybody have one of those?
I know Oprah does. Yeah.
I think this question points out a very interesting fact.
What does it point out?
Many people don't realize. The most important invention of all time is air conditioning.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that.
And
I mean,
it profoundly changed the South.
Food storage, transportation, everything.
The South as we know it would not exist without air conditioning.
Well, it would exist, but we would be very, very angry.
Well, it'd be the South of,
Yeah.
Yes, it would be very. I know I would be very angry.
There would be
hot.
There would be a great migration every summer.
I would be grossly angry.
The people in Maine and the New England states was like, oh, they're coming. Get the cornbread. The Southerners are coming.
Okay, I've got a question. Craig, how did you...
They would de-cornbread us?
Oh.
We would deep fry them and they would cornbread us.
Ouch.
Yes.
Craig, what brought you to Jackson, Tennessee?
A train. Chug, 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 chug. That's an old joke. That's, yes. Bing Crosby fans will recognize that.
Shout out to all the Bing Crosby fans.
That's right, all two of them. I came here for a job years and years and years ago. I worked for the Jackson Sun for a long time and stayed.
Would you say journalist by trade, artist by choice?
I was never a journalist. I was more like a journal-ish.
Speak to that.
Yeah.
And
that actually doesn't mean anything.
You also did You did some editorial cartooning, if I'm right. There
yeah,
too,
that was actually my great goal in journalism was to do either editorial cartoons full time or get into syndicated comic strips. Huge fan of comic strips all my life, but particularly Pogo.
Oh yeah.
And Peanuts. Grew up with Peanuts.
Now the reason I brought that up is one of your books titled "The Job," based on a true story. I mean, this is bound to have happened somewhere. Has a lot of humor in it, even while the book hits on very deep topics.
Great
Suffering. You actually found a way to write humor into a story about suffering. Was it difficult to do that, or do you find, like the old chestnut, comedy is hard, tragedy is easier to write?
It was not hard. It was excruciating.
Yeah.
I found that was the hardest stuff I'd ever written. Not just trying to make the funny parts actually funny,
right?
But the in-between times when you're not, being comical, keeping the right tone so that when the humor comes up, it's not completely out of place. And that was really challenging. And it took me. It's a small book, but it took me a long time to write it. I had to be on my other books. I found like I could write a chapter at one sitting without any real trouble. But with that book, I found that I had to be happy with just, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs at a time.
Now, it does remind me of kind of like Jesus' parables. Not saying you're equal with Jesus by any means, but how he used story. He didn't say, okay, everybody gather around, here's a sermon, here's what it means. He told the story and let the meaning of the story kind of hit them in their heart, rather than him just telling them exactly what it is. And apparently it works out pretty well, because here are some reviews from your book, The Job. Serious topics and themes deftly and engagingly handled. Uses humor to make a philosophical and Christian point. Mandatory reading for any Christian. These have got some really great reviews. And if I remember right, you also did an interesting video to market The Job. It was made a Lego animation.
Yeah, I completely blew the Lego movie out of the water.
Yeah,
I was so far ahead of my time on that.
Years before Lego movie came out.
Yeah,
yes,
they certainly would be embarrassed by something. I'm not sure what, but just a little stop motion animation. I read through a section of the book and did a little bit of animation to make it a little less boring. I think that video is still up on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, it definitely is. I heard you use a term in another blog called precious moments writing. Could you what's your meaning behind that?
Well, it was a slam on most modern Christian literature, and it's kind of the same idea that Flannery O'Connor had. She called it golden heart writing, and of course she's kind of the iconish Southern Gothic writer, and she her attitude toward a lot of Protestant writing in her own day, which was mostly the 1950s, was that it tried to avoid the grittiness or the earthiness of the incarnation. And in her mind, it was somewhat heretical in that way. And her writing, she called her writing hard, but it's because the Christian life is hard. The walk of faith is hard. Her best story on this theme is Parker's Back. So I would, recommend anybody who's interested to read Parker's Back and kind of get an idea.
I would have to completely agree with you on that point, because I've read a lot of Christian genre fiction, authors like Frank Peretti and Ted Decker, and both of them, they would comment on, how difficult it is if you're not writing a story about angels and end times, and it's a difficult sell to get into that market unless you're within a certain. You must write about this, can't talk about this, can't use profanity ever, can't be suggestive, whatever, kind of glossing over real life, in my opinion.
Well, and, it's not Christian writing unless the girl is saved at the end.
Right. And has no problems after she's saved.
Yeah.
Never doubts, never fears, just, I've got Jesus now, it's all roses and rose-colored glasses,
Right. Not only is your life going to be, smooth sailing with no bumps in the road, but God's main purpose better be to make sure your life has no bumps in the road.
Right.
And it's a completely earthbound paradigm. And I don't know if you wanted to get into this, but I kind of swerved into Southern Gothic writing myself after The Job. And, the point of my stories is to kind of break the reader away or challenge the reader to break away from kind of this earthbound paradigm and take a more mystical, heavenly look at what's going on. This conflict within the heavenlies that goes on around us and we're intimately a part of, though we don't see it.
What does the term Southern Gothic writing mean?
Well, first it's Southern.
Right, exactly.
Part of my road as a writer was I started out writing scripture-based fantasy because I'm pretty familiar with scripture. Then I went into the job, which is about corporate America. That was something I was pretty familiar with from my work. And then, all I had left was the South. So I swerved into the South. And the term Gothic, goes back to typical architecture of the Middle Ages and kind of the whole dark look of things from the medieval period. And so to apply that to the South, again, to invoke Flannery O'Connor, she said that she wrote about grotesques. Her characters she considered them grotesque. And she said that anything that comes out of the South is going to be called grotesque by the Northern reader. So therefore, Southern writing was by definition grotesque. But she went on to say, unless it is grotesque, in which case it's going to be called realistic. Mm-hmm. So her grotesque characters, she considered Northern readers would just accept them as being typical of the South. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to pick that up.
Almost like stereotypical.
Yeah, but
yes.
Being just bizarre. She also called her characters fanatics, so fanaticism being typical, actually real Southerners, instead of somebody who's out of the ordinary.
Fantastic. All right, we need to take our first break. We'll be back with a discussion of art, literature,
and everything in between.
In the South, and a Craig Davis original on our Jackson home.
You may not be the biggest bodybuilding champion of all time, but do you have a reunion or want to shed some pounds while building muscle? Come on down to Skyline Fitness and let our personal trainers guide you in the ways of the muscle. Yeah!
Craig, you've got an original for us today entitled Just the Sea. Before we talk a little bit about that, I want to ask you, as someone who has produced creative work in numerous works in a number of fields, how much of the creative process is, as my friend Jim calls it, a spark of inspiration that's just kind of naturally within you, and then how much of it is just work?
Well, the famous saying is that it's 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. And I think that's true. Actually, I've always, on everything that I've written, I've pretty much had an idea of where it's going and how it ends. So I've never done anything kind of stream of consciousness. And so, after the initial idea is kind of in place, then it's all grinding it out, and it's work. It's particularly a novel to stick with it long enough to get it done, and then to edit it, and then rewrite it.
Wow. So with that being said, Just the Sea, tell us a little bit about this song.
Well, the song is based on a Tennyson poem, Enoch Arden, which has actually been made into a couple of movies. One of them is My Favorite Wife with Cary Grant and Irene Dunn, who I strongly recommend for you folks. Not the movie, but Irene Dunn. It's about a man who's got this wonderful young wife, and he's a sailor, and he gets shipwrecked on an island, and he's gone. He's stuck on this island for like 10 years, and then he's finally picked up, and he goes back home. He's of course completely changed. He doesn't, after 10 years, in the elements, doesn't look like he used to, and he's wandering around his hometown, and he spots his wife, and she's off with another man, and there's children there, and he turns around and walks away. She's got a new life, and he's done. No reason to impose himself on it. So the song kind of came out of that, applied to a more modern time with slightly different problems.
All right, here's Craig Davis with Just the Sea.
Shipwreck in small town Tennessee, feet of clay, chains of steel bind me, dwelling in my future's past. Ocean view, getting nowhere fast, working my way to Annie Lee. More in my way than just the sea. If I ever cross the miles ahead of me, I'll never let go of Annie Lee. Never let go of Annie Lee. Time takes its toll upon years, perhaps too far for me to leap, my dear. Hope to find a hint of grace, drawn in the light of her face, working my way to Annie Lee. More in my way than just the sea. If I ever cross the miles ahead of me, I'll never let go of Annie Lee. Never let go of Annie Lee. I'm a fool to swim against the tide. Brace yourself for a bumpy ride. Nothing for me on this shore besides waiting, praying, working my way to Annie Lee. More in my way than just the sea. If I ever cross the miles ahead of me, I'll never let go of Annie Lee. Working my way to Annie Lee. If I could, I'd walk this bitter sea. If I ever cross the miles ahead of me, I'll never let go of Annie Lee. Never let go of Annie Lee. Never let go of Annie Lee.
The Bishop's Beard Gift Market of Jackson, Tennessee is the most eclectic little gift shop in Jackson. You will find whole bean coffee, exotic teas, handmade Ethiopian jewelry, coffee mugs, teapots, pottery, books, and gourmet snacks. The Bishop's Beard Gift Market. Great coffee for an even better cause.
Welcome back to Our Jackson Home. Jim and I are here with Craig Davis. Shipwrecked in small town Tennessee. Jim, I feel like that should be the sub-theme for our show. What do you think?
I don't know if shipwreck is the mood we want to have with our show.
You don't think so? I think
it should be a robust sailing rig with massive ropes.
Storming West Tennessee, a more
Yes.
Napoleonic theme. Craig, how has creating in the South been for you in small town Tennessee?
Well, the South has always been just a wellspring of creative talent, and Tennesseans are mostly known for music, of course. The writers come from Mississippi, so you know you better come from the right place or have the right bloodlines. What was the question?
Well, what's the value? So within the creative process, we talked earlier to some degree about the relationship of faith and creativity. Community is something Jim and I are looking to demonstrate within the West Tennessee family. And so I've just wondered, as you've shared songs, some of them are based in stories you have with friends. So what's been inspirational for you in the creative process?
Well, it's mostly just been experience, life experience as you go along. I mean, there's no way to avoid suffering and hardship, so called. It kind of depends on your perspective. What hardship is. I think that actually that has been a big part of creativity in the South. Has been suffering. I mean, this is where the blues come from. A lot of country songs are about heartbreak. A lot of the Southern Gothic writing that we talked about were about hard times. Now the South has changed profoundly over the last 50 years, so that cultural kind of suffering perhaps doesn't exist so much here as it once did. We probably we're more like the rest of the country now, so our suffering is probably more like the rest of the country now.
Sure.
And
there's joy to be found there. Jim,
yes.
What was your...
Would you think perhaps that it's also changed in suffering, modern suffering? There's a stigma against showing emotion. Like, people will show emotion when it builds up to a certain point when it's antisocial. But in our modern era, fathers teach their boys, don't cry, don't show certain emotions, and girls don't show certain emotions. And so if you're a man and you have someone very, very close to you die, it will be natural to cry. But I think in the modern era, isn't there a sort of stigma against certain emotions?
Well, that's true in some cultures, and then other cultures are very emotional.
Right.
I think what you're talking about is probably not particularly modern. It goes back to Protestant Stoicism and perhaps English reservedness. Don't ever accuse a Scotsman of not being emotional.
Right. Since you mentioned the English, I've also noticed that the English, although they are very reserved as a culture, they are capable of enormous humor and creativity, like Monty Python and other shows. What would you say your favorite television show is as a writer? Just, don't get all PBS, NPR. Just what's your favorite guilty pleasure in a television show?
I'll tell you a few.
All right.
Shoot.
And then I'll have a question for you.
All right.
Yeah, I like it.
One of my favorite shows of my entire life is the Dick Van Dyke Show. And it is like 50 years old, and it still holds up. It's an amazing thing. It is still funny.
Much like Dick still held up even after he fell over the couch so many times.
Really. Sorry about that.
Hello.
That's my heart.
That's my
this
unknown caller who likes to call me a lot.
This is proof that this show is live.
This will give you a hint of another favorite show.
All right.
This is my question to you.
All right.
Weren't expecting it, were you?
No, just out of left field.
Here it comes.
That was not the question.
Okay.
The question is, Mike or Joel?
Oh man, this is going to start a controversy here. I would have to say Joel.
Joel, definitely.
Yeah, Mike was good. The show we're talking about is Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Of course.
And for fans of the show, it's as heated a debate as the Kirk Picard debate is for Star Trek fans.
Boy,
you
that
know?
makes me feel bad.
How's that Mystery Science come back? Isn't there a return of it?
It has various new incarnations. There's Cinematic Titanic, and there's
Rift Tracks is another one, and they there's another one that's connected to Rift Tracks that I can't think of the name of. And I think there was talk for a while of actually doing Mystery Science Theater 3000 again as a web production.
Oh, that would be cool. Since we're on the subject here, Craig is also a great comedian. I mean, it's hard to realize that from the robust introduction he had, you know,
right?
But he's a real big fan of the Marx Brothers, and he's capable of a zinger here and there. Do you have a favorite joke that you'd like to share with us?
Well, not all the jokes can be good. I mean,
right.
You got to expect that sometimes.
We prefer bad jokes here.
Yeah.
That was a Marx Brothers joke, actually.
Oh, not all the jokes can be good.
Yeah. Yes, that's from Animal Crackers. One of the great things about the Marx Brothers was that they broke the fourth wall all the time, and particularly in Animal Crackers, Groucho would just talk to the audience, and the rest of the people on the stage would just kind of freeze. That was a wonderful thing. But I want to pursue this Mike and Joel thing, because I have a theory.
What's your theory?
My theory, by far, Joel was the superior host, and I only recently figured out why. And I think it's because the dynamic within the cast. When Joel was there, it was like the Mads were his parents, and they had sent him to his room, so he's up in his room, watching bad TV and playing with his toys, and he would occasionally reprogram his robots. He'd like put different arms on them, or switch their heads or stuff, like a kid up in his room when he's disobeyed, and the Mads were like his folks. They had control over him. When Mike came on, that switched. It seemed like Mike had the mad scientist number, but he was at the mercy of the robots. And for me, personally, that dynamic just didn't work as well.
Right. I did read an interview on some like Wikipedia or whatever that Joel said the reason why his character sounded kind of sleepy and tired was because he was sleepy and tired. They did a lot of their recording for that show in the late hours, and he just kept it in his character to just sort of sound sleepy,
Yeah.
But it worked for him.
Yeah. But I didn't mean to go on and on about that, but
That's stuff.
I mean, it's important stuff, and people need to know.
That's something that should always be there on the front. Just foster creativity in your kids. Because that's something it seems to be sacrificed. You say, well, learn your math because you're going to use this later on in your life. You get your science in, but no one ever says, hey, make sure you go out there and be in a play or learn a musical instrument, because that's going to be important in life too. And if you don't have that, I think education misses something without that creative aspect of it.
This is going to be a new segment every episode, Jim's parenting advice. I'm all in on Jim's parenting advice.
Right.
Now go up to your room and watch a bad movie.
That's right. Yes.
Hey, if I could make a living doing that, it would be great.
Were you going to start your kids on Army of Darkness at 4 or 6?
Oh, I want to put a speaker on whenever I get married, I'm just going to put some speakers on my wife's stomach, and they're going to get it inner utero.
That's
HD,
important.
Like HD, like IW, interwomb.
Are we heading towards inner
Let's try that again.
say that a word again. Utero.
Inter-utero.
Yeah, are we heading towards Army of Darkness? Beam straight in? You think?
Well, I've actually seen products like in a Sky Mall. You know that the catalog when you go flying, that they have these speakers you can put where you can play like foreign language tapes and great works of literature to try and make your child smarter before it's even born. It's weird.
It might not be a practical idea, but it sure could be a sequel.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Instead of a depository knowledge, it could be a suppository knowledge.
Let's close with our rapid fire segment.
All right.
And then Craig has
Sounds dangerous.
a final song. So, Jim and I are going to hit you with rapid fire questions.
Just
All
hit
right.
me.
Responses in less than 17 sentences. I mean,
I can't
7.
do that.
I mean, 7 words.
Be
Here we
reasonable,
go.
man.
Sky Mall. Have you ever bought from it?
What?
Have you ever bought from the Sky Mall catalog?
Nope, never have.
Jim?
Thin crust or hand tossed?
I'm gonna go with thin.
All right.
Pita? The chips.
You
do
know,
you like
I'm
'em?
not, I'm against harming animals, but sometimes they just go over the top.
Which reminds me of, we'll
Hey,
talk
those
about
animals would kill us if they got half a chance, you know?
That's-
I like animals with butter and seasoning. And like, yeah. What were you saying? Before I start to get
Proceed.
letters?
I was driving down Highland one day and saw a wreck as there were bikini models for PETA in Jackson, Tennessee.
No
right in front of
kidding.
me. That's,
Where was
that's
I?
Exactly right.
And now everyone has left our show and are checking this out on the internet.
KFC's attendance that day was massive, though.
Hey,
PETA's
we had
effects.
a-
Hey, you know
We
why
had
it
a-
was massive? Because all the legs, breasts, and thighs that were out in the street.
We had a wildcat strike at a KFC here in Jackson several years ago, and they were carrying signs, "No justice, no chicken."
Yeah. Oof.
They should have dressed up as cows, and then Chick-fil-A could have gotten it.
I think they closed that KFC. It was
Wow.
It was
that's
time
pretty
to
harsh
go.
justice.
You got a rapid fire question?
All right, I got a rapid fire question. Favorite board game?
I guess Monopoly. That's the one I've spent most time playing.
See, you're a tool of the man. You want Monopoly.
Yes, I am. No, I am the man.
You the man.
You the
You
man.
is the man.
Favorite movie of the 21st century?
Wow, 21st century. The Island. How do you like that? Russian movie with subtitles.
Come on.
The Island. Check it out.
How do you feel about the Ukrainian situation?
Man.
Casual questions there.
That's a bad to the bone.
Yeah?
Born under bad sign, bad news.
So you don't buy the Russian takeover of a sovereign as identical to previous foreign relation takeovers by Western nations?
No, I mean it's exactly the same. Why would it be any different?
But worth condemning.
Sure.
Well said.
Okay, I know a lot of my questions have to do with food, but Jackson, being in Tennessee, is also big on food as well. If you could have one last meal and you could have anything you want, what would it be? But it would have to be, here's the proviso, from restaurants in Jackson.
Without naming.
Without naming.
Well, I mean, you just got to go with pulled pork. I mean, you don't get any better than that.
Great choice.
It's got to be moist. You'd have to. I'm sorry to say this, folks, but you got to go outside of Jackson to get good beans. But yeah, that'd pretty much it. And a wedge of cheddar cheese, extra sharp.
That's something else I noticed on your one of your blog interviews. You talked about loving cheese, and also you were once wrestled to the ground by a set of bagpipes. What was that all about?
Well, that was a sad tale. Do you want like a goofy answer or a semi-serious answer?
Just go for it. Goofy, semi-serious, you know. Like,
Well, the thing, I walked in the door and the thing just grabbed me, and it's got these tassels, and they whip around the tassels, and it blinded me, and I was lucky to get out of there with my life.
Would you
And that's what I would expect from a Scotsman's instrument. I mean,
Yes.
It's going to be an angry instrument. You don't corner them.
they'll turn on you.
Would you undergarment your kilt?
Of course. What are you kidding? I have a little bit of respect for my fellow man.
All right, Jim, you got any closing questions?
All right, I got a closing question here. Where can our listeners go to find out more about you and how to purchase some of your books?
Well, I've got a website, which is stcelibart.com.
We'll have a link to that on our Facebook page.
Yeah, that you don't learn anything about me there, but that's kind of a dumping ground for a lot of my work. You can get my books from Amazon if you don't mind paying a little money. If you want them for free, go to smashwords.com.
Yeah, but hopefully you'd go to Amazon. So support your writer.
Just take it free. That's kind of I think the attitude that all artists need to take, because so few artists actually are recognized in their own time and are paid for their work, much less earn a living. So if you're an artist and you've got something important to say, just let it go for free, because it's not doing anybody any good sitting on your shelf. If nobody thinks they can make money off of you, just let it go for free.
Wow.
Right. Before we wrap up here, I'd like to remind our listeners that if you have any suggestions for future guests or questions you'd like us to ask our guests, feel free to leave a message on our Facebook page or contact us via email at ourjacksonhome@yahoo.com. That's all one word. And I think, Luke, that Craig has another song for us.
He does. Craig, we want to say thank you. You are a fantastic gift to our Jackson home, and your talents and spirit have blessed us all. So thanks for being with us.
I'm the gift that keeps on taking.
Ah.
So thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Craig.
We're an Easter people, and hallelujah's our song. Glory, honor, and praise to the Ancient of Days. Rise with the dawn. Maranatha, Jesus, you are coming again. All will worship the Lamb, holy living